Jinwoo looked at the screens in front of him. Numbers scrolled past showing power levels for 7 different star systems. Green meant good. Yellow meant watch carefully. Red meant emergency. Right now everything was green. The systems were running perfectly, the way they always did when he was working. He had been running this power station for 12 years. Station Kepler 442 was his home now, more than Earth had ever been. He knew every wire, every circuit, every backup system. He had designed most of them himself. When he first arrived, the station could barely power 2 planets. Now it powered 7 plus 17 space stations. The council said it was impossible. Jinwoo made it work anyway. His communicator buzzed. A message from Yuna, 3 words. Jinwoo read them twice, then 3 times. His hands stopped moving over the controls. He had known this might come. They had all known. But knowing and seeing were different things. Begin the protocol. Jinwoo took a deep breath. He looked around the control room. This place had been his life. Every screen, every chair, every coffee cup had a memory. Late nights fixing problems. Early mornings preventing disasters. Thousands of hours of work that nobody ever saw. The light stayed on, so people thought it was easy. They did not know. He opened a new file on his computer and began typing. Everything he knew went into that file. System designs, maintenance schedules, emergency procedures, warning signs to watch for, backup codes, override commands. He wrote it all down in simple, clear language that anyone could understand. It took him 3 days to finish. The document was 800 pages long. He uploaded it to the council database with no password protection. Anyone who wanted to read it could read it. Anyone who wanted to use it could use it. He had done his part. He had left instructions. What happened next was not his responsibility. Then he began training his replacement. Kira was a Nexilian with 4 arms and blue skin that changed color with her emotions. She was smart and hardworking. She had been his assistant for 2 years. She knew the basics, but the basics were not enough. This station needed someone who understood the whole system, not just pieces of it. Jinwoo spent a week showing her everything. He explained the connections between systems. He pointed out the small details that mattered. He showed her the workarounds he had created for problems the council refused to fix. Kira watched carefully and asked good questions, but Jinwoo could see the worry in her color-changing skin. She knew this was too much for one person. On the 5th day of training, Kira asked why he was leaving. Jinwoo smiled and gave the answer he had practiced. He said it was time to go home. He said he missed Earth. He said 12 years was enough. All of these things were true, but they were not the whole truth. The whole truth was in the 17 reports he had sent to the council over 6 years. Reports about dangers. Reports about needed repairs. Reports about safety upgrades. Every single one ignored. Every single one marked as low priority. The council did not want to spend money on maintenance. They only wanted to spend money on new projects that made them look good. Jinwoo had stopped sending reports 2 years ago. Instead, he fixed problems himself quietly, using whatever resources he could find. He borrowed parts from other systems. He rewrote code late at night. He made things work through pure stubbornness, but he could not do that forever. Nobody could. His last day arrived. Jinwoo came to work at the usual time. He checked every system like he always did. He made sure all the backups were active. He verified every safety protocol. He left everything running smoothly. If someone followed his instructions, the station would be fine. If they ignored his warnings, well, that was their choice. Kira gave him a gift. It was a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. A traditional Nexilian farewell present. She thanked him for teaching her. She said she would do her best. Jinwoo believed her. But her best would not be enough, not without the council's support. And the council had never supported the unglamorous work of keeping things running. He packed his belongings. 1 bag, that was all he had. The rest was just equipment that belonged to the station. He walked through the corridors one last time, past the cafeteria where he ate lunch, past the observation deck where he watched stars, past the maintenance tunnels where he had spent so many hours fixing things that were supposed to be someone else's job. The transport ship was waiting. Other humans were there too, all heading home. Dr. Hana from the medical center, Security Officer Taeyang from the patrol division, Translator Minho from the diplomatic corps. They nodded at each other but did not talk much. What was there to say? They all knew why they were leaving. The ship lifted off. Through the window, Jinwoo watched Station Kepler 442 grow smaller. The lights were still on. The systems were still running. Everything looked normal. But he knew better. He knew exactly how many things were held together by hope and human ingenuity. Without humans, those things would start breaking. Soon, all across council space, the same scene was happening. Humans boarding ships. Humans saying goodbye. Humans leaving jobs that nobody else wanted to do. They moved quietly without complaints or threats. They simply stopped showing up for work, and the galaxy kept spinning, unaware that something fundamental had changed. The transport jumped to faster than light speed. Jinwoo closed his eyes. 60 light years to Earth, 2 weeks of travel. Then he would be home, really home for the first time in 12 years. He tried to feel happy about that. Mostly he just felt tired. Behind him, the lights of Station Kepler 442 continued burning bright. The power flowed smoothly through the systems he had designed. Everything worked perfectly. For now. The first problem was small. Just a flicker in the power supply on Station Kepler 442. Kira noticed it on day 19. She checked the monitors and saw a minor fluctuation in Sector 3. The manual said to adjust the backup compensators. She did exactly what the manual said. The fluctuation stopped. Then it started again in Sector 5. Then Sector 7. Like dominoes falling, each fix creating a new problem somewhere else. Kira worked faster, switching between screens, trying to stay ahead of the cascade. But she had only been doing this job for 2 years. Jinwoo had done it for 12. By day 23, 6 stations were running on emergency power. The main systems had not failed completely. They had just become unreliable. Lights would dim for a few seconds, then brighten again. Climate controls would fluctuate. Computer systems would slow down. Nothing catastrophic. Just 1,000 small problems that made life difficult. The communication relays started failing next. These were systems that translated messages between species. Humans had maintained them for centuries, making tiny adjustments every day. The adjustments were so small that nobody noticed them happening. But when humans stopped making those adjustments, the translations became strange. A Vraxian trade negotiation turned into an insult exchange because the translator converted a polite greeting into a death threat. A medical prescription got scrambled, nearly killing a patient. A peace treaty had to be delayed because nobody could understand what anyone else was saying. The words were right, but the meanings were wrong. On day 31, Dr. Hana's replacement at the medical center faced his first real crisis. 3 patients came in with a rare condition that affected multiple species. The Verosian doctor was skilled and experienced. He had studied medicine for 30 years. But the patients refused his treatments. The problem was not medical knowledge. The problem was understanding. Dr. Hana had spent years learning the cultural beliefs of different species. She knew which species needed family present during treatment. She knew which species considered certain medications offensive to their religion. She knew how to talk to scared patients in ways that made them feel safe. The Verosian doctor had the knowledge but not the understanding. He offered the right medicine but in the wrong way. He followed the correct procedures but ignored the cultural context. Patients got worse because they would not accept help. 2 of them died. The doctor filed a report saying the patients were difficult and unreasonable. He did not understand that he was the problem. Trade routes that humans had optimized over decades began experiencing delays. Ships arrived late. Cargo got lost. Schedules fell apart. The route still existed on paper, but humans had made small improvements over the years. Shortcuts that saved time, procedures that prevented bottlenecks, relationships with station managers that smoothed out problems. Without humans, everyone followed the official procedures. And the official procedures were slow, inefficient, and outdated. Nobody had bothered to update them because humans made them work anyway. Now with humans gone, the truth became obvious. The system only worked because humans had been holding it together with improvisation and effort. Security systems started showing weaknesses. Humans had designed many of these systems, and they had built in safeguards that only they understood. Other species could operate the systems, but they did not know all the hidden features. They did not know which warnings to take seriously and which ones were false alarms. They did not know the unofficial protocols that prevented real threats. A border dispute between 2 species escalated into a military standoff. Normally, a human mediator would have intervened early, before tensions got serious. But the human mediators were gone. The other mediators tried to help, but they did not have the same relationships. They did not know the personalities involved. They could not predict who would compromise and who would not. The standoff lasted 3 weeks before both sides agreed to withdraw. Nobody fired weapons, but it was close, too close, and everyone knew it could have been prevented if a human had been there, but humans were not there anymore. In the council chamber, emergency meetings happened every day. Representatives who had laughed at Yuna's presentation now argued with each other. The Vraxian counselor, whose clicking mandibles had started the laughter, struggled to explain why his sector had lost essential services. He blamed poor planning. He blamed budget cuts. He blamed everyone except himself. Other counselors pointed fingers. Some said humans had sabotaged systems before leaving. Others said humans had been incompetent all along. A few suggested that the problems were just coincidental bad luck. Nobody wanted to admit the obvious truth. Humans had been essential, and now they were gone. The younger counselors, who had only been in their positions for a few decades, started asking questions. Why had humans been doing all these jobs? Why had the council not trained others? Why had nobody noticed how much work humans were doing? The older counselors had no good answers. They had simply assumed humans would always be there, always working, always fixing problems without complaint. On day 47, a junior aide suggested something that made everyone stop talking. She said maybe they should contact the humans, ask them to come back, explain that there had been a misunderstanding. The chamber went silent, the kind of silence that happens when everyone realizes they have made a terrible mistake, but nobody wants to admit it first. The Vraxian counselor cleared his throat, a sound like rocks grinding together. He said perhaps that was a reasonable idea. Perhaps humans would be willing to return if asked nicely. Perhaps this was all just a temporary problem that could be solved with simple communication. Nobody mentioned that humans had been trying to communicate for 300 years. Nobody mentioned the ignored reports, the rejected proposals, the dismissed concerns. Nobody mentioned the laughter in this very chamber just weeks ago. They all pretended this was a new problem with an easy solution, but deep down in the part of themselves they did not want to examine, they all knew the truth. This was not a new problem. This was an old problem they had refused to see. And now finally they could not look away anymore. The first message from the council arrived on a Tuesday morning. Taeyang read it while drinking coffee in his new office on Earth. The office was smaller than his old one, with windows that looked out over actual trees instead of empty space. He preferred it. The message was formal and carefully written. It thanked humans for their dedicated service to the council over the past 3 centuries. It expressed hope that humans had enjoyed their time away. It invited humanity to send representatives to discuss terms for resuming operations. The tone was pleasant, as if humans had just gone on vacation. Taeyang read it twice. Then he deleted it. He did not reply. There was nothing to say. 3 days later, a second message arrived. This one was less formal. It acknowledged that there had been some operational challenges in council space. It suggested that perhaps negotiations would benefit both sides. It mentioned potential benefits for humanity if they chose to return. The word potential appeared 5 times. Taeyang let this message sit in his inbox for a week. He showed it to other human officials. They discussed it during lunch breaks and evening meetings. Everyone agreed on the answer. When Taeyang finally replied, he used only one sentence. We are not interested in resuming operations. The third message arrived 10 days after that. The careful diplomatic language was gone. The council admitted they were facing serious problems. They needed human expertise. They were prepared to offer concessions, full voting membership, technology partnerships, resource allocations, formal apologies. Everything humans had asked for 300 years ago was suddenly on the table. Taeyang forwarded this message to Yuna without adding any comments. She had retired from diplomatic service but still advised the human government. She read the council's offer in her small apartment near the coast. Outside, waves crashed against rocks. The sound was soothing in a way that space station hums had never been. Yuna made herself tea and sat by the window. She thought about the council chamber with its 2 bright lights. She thought about 5 years of presenting proposals that nobody took seriously. She thought about the laughter. That clicking, chirping, musical laughter that said humans were children playing at being adults. The council's offer was generous. It gave humans everything they had wanted. But Yuna felt nothing when she read it. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just a deep, tired sadness. They were offering respect now because they needed help. Not because they believed humans deserved it. Not because they had learned anything real. Just because their systems were failing and they were desperate. That was not respect. That was fear pretending to be respect. And Yuna had no interest in accepting fake respect from people who would go back to dismissing humans the moment their crisis ended. She spent 2 days writing humanity's response. She wrote it carefully, choosing each word to be clear and final. The message acknowledged the council's offer. It expressed appreciation for their willingness to reconsider human participation. But it declined the invitation. Humans would not return to council space to work as they had before. They had learned too much about how the council viewed them. They had learned that 300 years of dedication meant nothing if you were considered young and naive. They had learned that contribution without recognition was just exploitation dressed in polite words. The message continued with an offer of humanity's own. They would maintain diplomatic relations with the council. They would trade on fair terms. They would share knowledge and technology when appropriate. But they would do it as equals, not as junior partners grateful for scraps of acknowledgement. And they would do it from a distance, from their own space, on their own terms. Yuna ended the message with one final paragraph. It explained that respect cannot be negotiated after centuries of contempt. Trust cannot be rebuilt with sudden concessions offered only in crisis. The council could have everything they had once denied humanity. But they could not have humanity itself. That price had been paid in full. She sent the message to Taeyang. He read it once and approved it immediately. The response went out through official channels, reaching the council within hours. Yuna imagined the counselors reading it in their bright chamber. She wondered if they would understand. Probably not. People rarely understood lessons they did not want to learn. More messages came from the council over the following weeks. Some were angry. Some were pleading. Some tried to negotiate individual deals with specific humans. Jinwoo received offers for his engineering expertise. Dr. Hana got requests to return to her medical center. Security Officer Byung was promised command of an entire sector if he came back. Every human received the same guidance from Earth's government. They could make their own choices. But if they chose to work with the council again, it would be on professional terms, fair payment, clear contracts, limited duration. No more endless dedication to people who did not appreciate it. Most humans declined the offers. A few accepted short-term consulting work at high prices. They went back to council space for a few months, fixed specific problems, and then returned home. They were polite and professional. They did exactly what their contracts specified, nothing more. The extra work that humans used to do freely, the improvisation and creativity and care, was gone. The council learned something they had never understood before. There was a difference between doing a job and caring about a job. Humans had cared. They had seen problems and fixed them without being asked. They had stayed late and worked extra hours because they believed in making things better. That care could not be bought or negotiated. It could only be given freely. And once lost, it could not be recovered. Yuna watched the news reports showing council representatives trying to adapt to their new reality. They were learning to maintain their own systems. They were hiring consultants from various species. They were investing in training and infrastructure. It would take them decades to rebuild what humans had provided. Maybe they would succeed. Maybe they would learn. But that was their problem now. Humanity had moved on. 5 years passed. The initial chaos in council space had settled into a new normal. Systems that had once been elegant and efficient now ran with acceptable mediocrity. The council had learned to function without humans, though they functioned differently. Less smoothly. More expensively. With more effort, Jinwoo sat in his office on Earth looking at a request from station Kepler 442. They wanted to license his power distribution designs. The message was professional and respectful. It offered fair payment and clear terms. He approved it and sent the contracts back. Business was business. He received many such requests now. His company sold human technology to species across the galaxy. The prices reflected true value. not the discounted rates humans had charged when they worked for the council. Some species complained about the cost. Jinwu reminded them that quality work deserved quality payment. Most agreed and paid. Those who did not went elsewhere and usually came back later after cheaper solutions failed. Dr. Hana ran a medical training program that attracted students from dozens of species. They came to Earth to learn what she had known all along. Medical knowledge was important, but understanding patients was equally important. She taught them about cultural sensitivity, about listening, about seeing beyond symptoms to the whole person. Her students paid tuition. They attended classes. They studied hard. When they returned to their homeworlds, they were better doctors. Not because they learned new medical techniques, but because they learned to see their patients as individuals, with beliefs and fears and hopes. It was a lesson that could not be rushed or forced. It took time. The council still sent messages sometimes. Not desperate pleas anymore, but invitations to conferences, proposals for joint projects, requests for advice. The tone was different now. Respectful, cautious. They had learned that humans would walk away again if treated poorly. That knowledge changed how they spoke. Some humans accepted these invitations. They attended conferences as honored guests. They advised on projects for consulting fees. They shared knowledge when it benefited both sides. But they always returned home afterward. Earth was their center now, not an afterthought. In human schools, children learned about the departure in their history classes. Teachers explained it carefully, avoiding both pride and bitterness. It was not a story about revenge. It was not a story about being better than other species. It was a story about understanding your own worth and refusing to accept being undervalued. The lesson was simple but powerful. You cannot force others to respect you. You can only respect yourself enough to walk away when they do not. Sometimes leaving is the only way to show people what they had. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply say no. Yuna gave lectures at universities occasionally. She was old now, her hair gray, her movements slower. Students filled auditoriums to hear her speak. They always asked the same question at the end. Would you ever consider returning to work for the council? Her answer never changed. She explained that humanity had not left because of anger. They had not left to punish anyone. They had left because staying meant accepting a role that diminished them. They had left because 300 years of patience had taught them that some people only learn through loss. Humans contributed to the galaxy differently now. They shared their knowledge through trade and education. They participated in diplomatic discussions as equals. They helped solve problems when asked respectfully and paid fairly. But they no longer carried the burden alone. They no longer fixed everything quietly while others took credit. The council had erected a memorial in their main chamber. Yuna saw pictures of it on the news. A crystal structure that caught light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. The inscription was written in 47 languages. It said, "Let no contribution go unrecognized, no voice go unheard, no partner be taken for granted." In memory of lessons learned too late. The memorial was beautiful. Yuna supposed it was well-intentioned. But she knew what it really meant. It was not an apology. It was a reminder to themselves. A warning to future counselors. Do not make the same mistake we made. Do not assume anyone will stay forever no matter how you treat them. It was a lesson the council would have to keep learning. Because forgetting came easily to those in power. They would need that memorial to remember. Sometimes new species joined the council. Their representatives would see the memorial and ask about its meaning. The older counselors would tell them the story, about the humans who had worked for 3 centuries without recognition, about the day they simply left, about the chaos that followed. They told the story carefully, making sure the lesson was clear. Respect was not something you granted as a favor. It was something you gave because it was deserved. And those who forgot this truth did so at their own risk. The new representatives would nod and promise to remember. Some of them meant it. Some of them would forget as soon as things became comfortable. That was the nature of power. Comfort bred forgetfulness. But the memorial stood in the chamber as a permanent reminder. And somewhere 60 light years away, humans lived their lives without needing reminders. They had learned their lesson the hard way. They would not forget it. Yuna sat on her porch watching the ocean. The waves came in and went out with reliable rhythm, constant and eternal. She was old now, near the end of her life. She had spent decades in diplomacy, trying to build bridges between species. She had succeeded in ways. failed in others, but she had learned the most important lesson. You could not make people respect you through endless patience and service. You earned respect by knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. Sometimes the kindest thing you could do was walk away and let people learn from your absence. The galaxy was better now in small ways. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. The council was more careful about recognizing contributions. They listened to newer members more seriously. They valued the work that kept things running, not just the work that looked impressive. It had taken humanity's departure to teach them. It had taken crisis and chaos and years of struggle, but they had learned. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not permanently, but they had learned. And humanity had learned too. They had learned that their worth was not defined by others' recognition. They had learned that walking away was sometimes the bravest choice. They had learned that respect given under duress was not the same as respect freely offered. These were hard lessons, but valuable ones. The waves kept coming. The sun moved across the sky. Yuna closed her eyes and smiled. She had done her part. The rest was for the next generation to navigate. They would make their own mistakes and learn their own lessons. That was how progress happened. Slowly, painfully, but inevitably. And somewhere in the galaxy, the memorial stood in the council chamber, reflecting light and memory, a permanent reminder of the day humans said enough, the day they left without saying a word, the day the council learned what they had lost, and the day the galaxy changed forever. The lights in the council chamber were always too bright. Yuna had thought this every single day for the past 5 years. The walls glowed with colors that hurt human eyes, blues and greens that pulsed like a living heartbeat. She stood at the speaking platform, her hands shaking just a little. Nobody could see them shake because she held them still against the cold metal edge. Today was important. She had spent months preparing for this moment. The presentation floating in the air showed charts and numbers and maps. Each one told the same story. Humans kept the council working. They fixed broken machines. They helped different species talk to each other. They stopped fights before they became wars. For 300 years, humans had done this work quietly. Yuna began to speak. Her voice was steady even though her heart was beating fast. She explained the problems she had found. Power systems were old and dangerous. Communication networks needed repairs. Medical centers needed more doctors. She had solutions for everything. Simple solutions that would make life better for everyone in the council. The representatives sat in their special chairs made for their different bodies. Some had tentacles. Some had scales. Some glowed in the dark. 47 different species, all watching her. She could not read their faces. Humans were still new to reading alien expressions. But she felt something in the room change as she spoke. She talked about fairness. Humans wanted to vote on important decisions. They wanted other species to recognize their work. They wanted to be real partners, not junior members who nobody listened to. These were not big requests. They were reasonable. They were right. Then the Vraxian counselor made a sound. It started as a clicking noise from his mouth parts. Other representatives joined in. The room filled with strange sounds. Chirps, rumbles, musical notes that went up and down. It took Yuna a moment to understand. They were laughing. All of them. They were laughing at her. The Vraxian counselor spoke in the common language everyone used. His voice was kind, the way adults talk to children. He said humans were young. They did not understand how the council worked. They needed to be patient. Maybe in another 1,000 years they would be ready for real responsibility, but not now. Not yet, other counselors agreed. They said nice words that meant nothing. They thanked humans for their service. They called humans enthusiastic and hardworking. But they would not give humans what they asked for. The answer was no. It had always been no. It would always be no. Yuna felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart. Something deeper. It was not anger. She had been angry before many times when the council ignored human ideas. This was different. This was understanding, clear and cold and final. They would never respect humans. Never listen. Never see humans as equals. 300 years of work meant nothing to them. She turned off her presentation. The floating images disappeared. She gathered her papers and her data files. The counselors were still making sounds, still amused by the naive humans who thought they deserved respect. Yuna walked toward the door. Her footsteps echoed in the large chamber. Nobody tried to stop her. Nobody asked where she was going. They did not care. Outside the chamber, Yuna walked through corridors that curved and twisted in ways that made no sense to human eyes. The station had been built by species who thought differently about space. She had learned to navigate it, just like she had learned 47 different greeting customs and memorized which species found eye contact rude. She reached her office and locked the door. For a long time, she sat in the dark. Earth was 60 light years away. Her family was there. Her friends, her home. She had not seen Earth in 7 years because this job was important, because she believed in the Council, because she thought understanding between species mattered. Yuna opened her computer and began typing. The message was short. Only 3 words. But those 3 words would change everything. She had prepared for this possibility, hoping she would never need it. Every human working for the Council had received instructions months ago. They all knew what to do if she sent this message. She typed, "Begin the protocol." Her finger hovered over the send button. This was the moment. After this, there was no going back. She thought about Jinwoo working in the power stations. She thought about Hana treating patients in the medical centers. She thought about thousands of humans scattered across Council space, all doing jobs that nobody noticed until something went wrong. They deserved better. They all deserved better. And if the Council could not see that, then the Council would have to learn the hard way. She pressed send. The message went out through encrypted channels to every human facility, every human ship, every human outpost in Council territory. It traveled faster than light, jumping through communication relays that humans had built and maintained. Within minutes, every human in Council space received it. Yuna sat back in her chair. She felt tired but also peaceful. The decision was made. Soon everyone would understand what humans had been doing all along. Soon the Council would realize what they had lost. But by then, it would be too late. She began packing her belongings. There was not much. A few pictures of Earth, some books, a plant that reminded her of home. Everything fit in one small bag. 7 years of her life, and it all fit in one bag. Tomorrow, she would begin the journey home. Tomorrow, she would be just another human who had tried to make the galaxy better. But tonight, she was the human who had said enough. Tonight, she was the one who had finally drawn the line. The Council chamber was empty now. The lights still pulsed with their 2 bright colors. The chairs sat waiting for their occupants to return tomorrow. Everything looked normal, but nothing would be normal again. The counselors did not know it yet, but their world was about to change. And this time, humans would not be there to fix it.